This computer. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and we're just going to walk through the agenda. Do you guys have the agenda in front of you?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. All right. Trying to have everything over here. All right. So introduction, you guys all saw each other, right? So today we have Joan, we have Barb, and we have Christy, and we have myself. And I decided rather than go to Sioux City today, which is like 39 miles from my house, I thought, well, I'm just going to go to the Cherokee office, which is only 19 miles from my house. So I am borrowing somebody's space. Well, hopefully they don't come in, but if they do, I'll find another space. Any questions? We talked a little bit about the requirements for credit. And does anybody have any questions about what to do for credit?
No, I'm assuming on mine you just want me to send you papers on the stuff that I do.
Yep.
Is that correct? Just email it to you?
Yep, email would be perfect. And it doesn't have to be super in detail because I know you have to do something different. I just wanted you to get kind of a gist of what the teaching strategies is all about when it comes to that foundation and things like that. Had to make it comparable to what these other guys are doing.
Sure.
Okay.
It looks good. I read over it and it does, looks doable. You want it due, you said October 25th?
Something like that. Let me look real quick.
If I get it done sooner, I'll send it to you as soon as I'm done, so.
Okay. October, I think.
Oh, 26th, okay.
19th.
Oh, 19th. Okay.
But if anybody needs more time, just let me know. I just had to put something down to remind myself to make sure I get grades in.
No, I'll just write it down so I'm sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. Well, the first thing or the next thing, I guess, on the agenda, we're just going to review those gold objectives. Some of you, I can't remember how long you guys have all been teaching.
I taught for 10 years transitional kindergarten.
Okay. So you had to worry about different standards, different objectives that you were looking at. So you're pretty unfamiliar with the gold objectives, right?
Right.
Okay. And then, Christy, how long have you been using gold?
I've been using gold about a year. Before that, I had only subbed in the preschool classroom, so I didn't actually have to do the recording, but I've been using it consistently for about a year now.
Okay. Okay. And how about you, Joan?
Well, I was student taught in the Head Start classroom, so I learned it there and I used it for the first year that I was with them, and then I've been subbing since, so I've fallen out of practice of it even though I'm familiar with it.
Okay. Well, let's just refamiliarize ourselves with it a little bit. Oh, darn it, I thought I had it in. There we go. Thought I had it in order. So, and I pulled it up. If you guys have it in front of you, there's many different ways that they
I can see yours.
format it. Yeah. So if you want to just look up mine, that's good. So it's chunked like we practiced. It's chunked into big, large areas. That first area, the social emotional, to me, that's kind of the foundation because I teach PBIS and I don't know, social emotional, if you don't have that down, you're not going to get anything. I think social emotional stuff we really need to work on first. So we look at children regulating their own emotions and behaviors, establishing and sustaining those positive relationships, and participating cooperatively in groups. Those three big objectives, and then they've got their, remembers what comes underneath the objectives.
I couldn't hear you. What?
You remember what these A, B's, and C's are called?
Dimensions.
Yeah, yep. We've got areas, objectives, and dimensions. Good job. Then let's look at physical. We're looking at how children move, how they balance, how they demonstrate their gross motor manipulative skills. What would that be?
Gross motor manipulative would be like writing. Well, no, not really writing. That's fine motor. But using your arm,
Walking,
holding things.
Like, I guess I look at it like maybe using balls.
Yeah, throwing a ball, catching a ball, that sort of thing.
Well, I get possibly.
basically physical
Yeah,
activity.
the big muscles, the big muscle
Mhm.
groups, when
Okay.
they're involved, then it's a gross motor manipulative skill. So if you're dribbling a ball or playing soccer, those kinds of things.
Maybe carrying something.
Probably,
Carrying a doll.
yeah. And then the fine motor would be that little muscle coordination. So it has fingers and hands, drawing and writing tools. So language has 3 objectives: listening to and understanding language, using language themselves, and then using appropriate conversational and other communication skills. Cognitive is the one that always gets me. I mean, I can understand social emotional. I know what goes in there. I know what goes in the physical. Language is pretty easy to figure out, but the cognitive part, this is the one that always gets me a little bit. So the first objective demonstrates positive approaches to learning. It makes sense. I just have to keep remembering that. So that attending and engaging, that's where that would go. The persisting, the solving, problem solving, showing curiosity and motivation, showing flexibility and inventiveness in thinking. Those are all under that demonstrates positive of approaches to learning. And then number 12, remembers and connects experiences, recognizes and recalls, making connections. Number 13, I always thought it should go somewhere else. And number 14, kind of the same, but 13 is uses classification skills. So starting to do those categories, that's under the cognitive. Uses symbols and images to represent something not present. That's that when they're engaging in that dramatic play. Did those make sense to you guys, or are you like me and that did not make sense?
Yeah, those make sense to me.
Good.
I also think of classification as a mathematics skill.
That's what I do too, and
That's what I was thinking.
want to stick it, but it's a cognitive skill.
But if it goes, broader than mathematical, like if you could think just the difference between animals and humans, that's classification.
Right. Yeah, true. That's true. Literacy, that's all good. The phonological awareness, phonics skills, and word recognition. And remember, this goes through 3rd grade. We shouldn't be teaching phonics in preschool. We can do the rhyme. We can do alliteration. We can do identifying letters. We can listen to sounds, those little small pieces of sounds called phonemes. Eventually, once they get both of those real strong, then we start connecting them together. That knowledge demonstrates knowledge of print and its uses. Comprehending and responding to books and other texts. Demonstrating writing skills. That all makes sense, even though writing does kind of sound like it could go into the physical part a little bit. Those overlap a little bit. And then we have math. Uses number concepts and operations. Explores and describes spatial relationships and shapes. Compares and measures. And that's kind of where I always would go with that cognitive thing. Because I think when you're comparing, you're going to classify, but that's all right. They had to put them somewhere. And then science and tech, social studies, arts, and English language acquisition. Are you guys aware, are you familiar with the home language study?
Is that the form that they have to send at the beginning of the year that you have to say what your primary language is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's what that is. So just make sure that you guys are doing that. I don't think everyone is familiar with that. So again, you guys have this link. This is just a little quick thing if you need to look at it. Teaching Strategies has changed. A year ago, they have a new version now. And once they went to this new version, that birth through third grade version, they've really clamped down on who can share what. So I just like to share online stuff unless they have a lot of copyright.
Gotcha. Okay.
They developed a program and they want to make money from their program, and I get that.
Sure.
So I just am sharing links with you guys. Any questions on the goal objectives themselves?
No.
Nope.
No.
See, aren't you guys glad you're here? Because if you weren't here, then you'd have to be writing stuff like, or Jessica is going to have to write some comments about all this stuff. I write the articles. What I would like to do is look at that second article first, the number 5, childhood assessment. Do you guys have those handy? Did you print them off by any chance?
I did print mine off.
I did too.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mine's on my screen. I working with a different system than what I'm used to, and the connection between my computer and my printer I haven't quite figured out yet.
Nope, not a problem. I do have it pulled up. So
Thank you.
if you guys wanted to look at my screen too, that works. So I think the very first thing I want to talk about, I like this one because it explains what early childhood assessment is. Just reading this paragraph right here, childhood assessment is a process of gathering information about a child, reviewing that information, and then using it to plan activities that are at a level the child can understand and learn from. To me, that just makes sense. In this article, what did you guys find that was important or things that you wanted to remember? And I'm going to put it a little bit so I can see your faces. It's easier for me to talk to people on this side. I can see your names and faces, and it is just to a blank screen.
I like the part where they said you had to do, the assessment should be formal and informal. So, you have to kind of make sure you're assessing many different ways to get to your outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And not using the standardized testing and questionnaires.
Exactly. And why do you think that's important?
Well, every child learns differently. Some of them, will show you what they learn in a more formal way, and some that more informal, just by doing daily activities.
Mm-hmm.
I like the part where it's said that there should be different kinds of assessment, because one snapshot is just a snapshot. I think of it like school day picture. That's what that child looked like on that day. And if you took a different picture the next day or the next day, you'd see a different side of that child maybe. So the different types of assessment are different pictures on different days.
Exactly. And I think it gives you a more realistic picture of the child. It's more what we call authentic.
That's what I was going to say. My favorite part was the assessment needs to be authentic, that it needs to be in the normal setting. That's what I think is one of the most important things, that it's not a take out of the classroom and do testing. This is what they're doing on a natural, normal day.
Right. So what I would say is like a more well-rounded assessment. So you're getting checking them in all areas.
Exactly. Back when I was an early childhood special ed teacher, the way kids got into the program is they had a school psychologist that came and gave a formalized test, a standardized test. So it was a one-shot deal, and the kid, his whole future could be based on that one day, out of context, not in the classroom. He was pulled to another room with a stranger. And I look back at that and I'm like, these poor kids, you know, I'm glad. And the more I learn about assessment, and the more I don't know, I'm glad. We need to start definitely using teachers' input and a variety of assessments, and not make decisions based on a snapshot.
Yeah, that is so true, because my daughter, very bright girl, she froze when she had to take a test. So, kids just react differently.
Oh yeah, exactly. Like when you go to the doctor's office, they always tell us your blood pressure is going to be higher because most people are nervous when they come to a doctor's office. So what if they prescribed everybody blood pressure meds just based on that one stop?
Yeah, that would be bad.
Absolutely. No, I really like this article. I thought it was a nice, easy read. I like how they say that we should involve parents, where it talks about parent ratings.
Mhm.
That is really big. It's a big push, because a lot of times we do leave those families out, and we need to make sure that parents are included, not just a one time at at your home visits, but you have that ongoing communication with parents and offer them ways to assess their children also. They have different assessment systems on that third page. Scroll down to that so you can see what I'm talking about. These are the different assessment systems that are available. This one was in Massachusetts, but we also use these here. We use, some people do HighScope. I think a lot of people that are in the Head Start settings use. Do they use?
Yeah, one of the gals at my table said that that's what they use. It's the HighScope.
Okay. If you are a state-funded preschool in the state of Iowa, you might do HighScope, but you also have to do Gold.
Right, that's what she said. They assess with Gold, but they use the HighScope curriculum.
Yep. And there's a lot of different curriculums out there, and a lot of them are good. A lot of them are research-based. The state of Iowa has not recommended any. Just Teaching Strategies Gold uses the creative curriculum, so it just makes it easier because it all blends together.
Okay.
So why do you think they use the HighScope then in the Head Start programs?
In the Head Starts,
Mm-hmm.
HighScope has been around for a long time, and it's a really good one, and it really pairs nicely with the philosophy. Is the same as what creative curriculum is. They all look at room arrangements and play. There's just a little bit of difference. They have the Plan, Do, Review. That is a trademarked HighScope thing. So nobody else can say Plan, Do, Review unless you're using HighScope. But that's just the children themselves make a plan for the day, or for when they go into their play area. Their work time is what it's called, and then they play or work, and then they come back and they have to talk about what they did, just to help them learn to make a plan and to follow through with that plan, and then to talk about what they did.
That was
Yeah,
my
I'm not familiar
experience.
with that at all. So
Okay.
Yeah, that was my experience with the Head Start. Also, I think that because it is a federal program, I think that is one thing that differentiates it from the state program. So I think that's also where the high scope comes in.
Oh yeah, good point. That way there's continuity across the nation and everybody's using a good
Okay,
spell.
yeah, that makes sense.
All right, I think, oh, I did want to point on, okay, let's go to, I did like this stuff. How do you implement assessment into your program? And then it talks, let's just read the bolded parts where it talks about assessment aligns with instructional goals and approaches.
Mhm.
That to me makes so much sense, right? Why assess if you're not going to have goals of what you're going to assess on? Make a plan, have a lesson plan, know what you're going to assess when you walk into that part of the day. And then that just makes sense to me. I do like this too, where it says the assessor knows the child. And I really found that out when because I still have one district that I'm a consultant for special ed. That's okay.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. We have that sometimes. It's so much easier if I've been to the classroom several times. So I get to know the child. I can see them in many different contexts, many different parts of the day. And then if I have to do a standardized formal assessment, then they know me, they trust me, and we just say, hey, come with me. We're going to play together in a different area. But it does help if I know the child, or anybody that's assessing knows the child. We talked about this, the assessment is authentic. One thing we know about observations, we can do it all the time. They're ongoing and they're diverse. We don't just do our observations at a certain part of the day every day. We're doing them throughout the day. And it is a cycle. It seems like everybody has their own cycle, but they still are saying the same things, maybe using different words and maybe spreading it apart a little bit differently, but it's still the same. Remember when we talked about, oh no, that was in my other class I taught, but okay, so we instruct, we observe, we look at the kids, see how they respond to our instruction, and we're documenting that and we're recording it. And then once we get that documentation, we take it, we analyze it, we evaluate it, we make new plans, we might summarize it, we talk about it, hopefully in a group that we're able to talk about it with our paras. And then we plan what we're going to do next, we instruct, and then that whole cycle repeats. So it's just, we're using what we're learning about our children to make new plans for instruction.
So as a teacher, like I've not done that. So do they pick a child, like I'm going to observe this child today while I do this instruction, or they observe the whole group, or how do they keep all those notes for all those many? I don't know how many children they have. Like Joan, how many students will you have this year? Do you know?
I'm going to let Christy and Joan answer that. Oh, Joan's muted.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be muted.
Oh.
I just was wondering how, when you instruct and observe, do you pick a child a day that you're going to observe, or do you watch the whole group, or how do you keep notes on all those children when you're instructing? I just didn't know if you kind of pick out one or two kids you're going to watch that day, or how you do that.
That's my plan, is that so I have 20 students and I have 2 aides. So I think per day that so I have a full roster, and I choose 4 children to keep tabs on over the day, and I give 1 to a para, 1 to another para, and then I do 2, and there's listed areas the physical based on those 38, and then I copy the observation, send it home, keep a copy. So I have a copy of what has been documented, and home gets a copy of what happened today.
Mhm.
And if we get 4 kids done a day for over 5 days, we've done each kid once a week.
That's a good plan.
Yeah, it is. How about you?
Well, we had 13 kids in our class last year, and I'm the para, and then my teacher. And what we would do is, depending on our lesson plan, because we did small group every day, we would, in our lesson plan, try to plan a couple of times during the day where we might be doing the same objective in different activities. And a lot of times we would either document with our phone to take the picture so we could do it there, or I would remember what we were looking up and do a note that had all the kids in my small group's names, and then explain the activity in the note, and then I would put them on their color bar during nap time. I would like, I'd have little notes on I always carried a sticky, like a Post-it note things, so I could take little notes as we were going. But then, so she had 7 kids and I had 6 kids, and we would try to focus on one objective, or one dimension of an objective, actually even more defined, and try to do it like 3 different times during the day so we could sort of catch everyone normally doing that activity.
Oh, it sounds like a lot to do that. So I'm just wondering how they do it.
I agree. I think it sounds like a difficult challenge, but I like how you guys, I mean, both ways of doing it are different, but I think they're both doable.
Well, and there are some days that we would, not everybody wanted to do the activity that should correlate with the objective or dimension. And so that person got left off the note, and then we'd try to find them the next day if we could go back and talk about what we did yesterday, and maybe that person is more willing to go along with what we did yesterday today, and we catch them in that note later.
Right. So as I understand it, the Gold has lesson plans kind of set up for you, and that includes what the objectives are. Is that correct? They have.
Yes, they can. You can also
books, or
we do. My teacher in my classroom does she pulls the different lesson plans, because you have some choices as you go along. Like, if you want to do this objective, they suggest that there's like 4 things that could involve that objective or dimension, and she'll pull those into our lesson plans, and we'll give it a try, and it doesn't always work, or that particular activity is just not a great activity for our class. It's just not something. We had a lot of boys in our class last year, and some of the activities just were not interesting to them. And so we had to sort of change it or adjust it to make it so that they wanted to jump off from a point. A lot of times there was discussion when we talked about it, then we did it, then we reviewed it. And a lot of times in the discussion, we'd get off on a different way, and that seemed more interesting to them. And so we have to adjust, and for us, it was a lot of note taking and remembering what was going on, and having a time. Nap time was really good for us. We would make little notes as we went along during the day, or with our pictures with our phone, and then we were able to sort of make them fit later.
And so when you have all those notes, then you go into your computer and you log all those into their Gold, and you have like a separate Gold thing for each child. Is that how that works?
There's a separate goal thing, but you can also go through and click your objective or your dimension, and then all of your kids in your class are listed there, and you can check where you would have put them. And a lot of times on my notes, I do the numbers because it's easier than writing the whole color word, because they correlate the numbers.
Number where they are on the group, like those orange, blue, yellow.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay,
Yes.
I'm totally not familiar with any of it, so.
It is, if you don't, once you get in it, and if you do the documentation app on your phone, you can do it all right there. And then you don't have to worry about going back to your computer and uploading them in your computer. And it takes one step out if you have that on your phone already, and you can just take the picture and then and just hit upload right with that picture. And then it'll bring your kids up.
Question, then I'll let you go on. But does your school supply you with like an iPad or a phone or something to do that on?
We do. We have 2 or 3 iPads that we share with the other preschool classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so at least there can be at least one in each classroom if that's something that I ended up putting it just on my phone because it was because it's a free app. And then I use the school Wi-Fi, so I'm not using my own data. But then sometimes if you pull the iPad up in front of a child, they're like, but you can whip out your phone a little more secretly.
Okay, sorry.
And you can do multiple objectives in one activity too. So you can do a lot of times, especially that cognitive part, the things that were under cognitive, that are the way that they're processing and the way that they're thinking, can go along with a math objective. So you might get, a lot of times my notes are, there's a social emotional aspect to it. There's a cognitive aspect to it. There's a language because they're talking to me about a book that we read, and in the book they had to solve a problem, but they also had to share their book with their friend. And in the book they were talking about how many apples were up on top. It was 4 different objectives or dimensions in one note.
Well, that's good to know. Mm-hmm. Just kind of panicked me that you got to take all those notes, but I'm not actually doing it right now. So, thank you.
And it gets easier once you become more familiar with the objectives and the dimensions, because you'll see things and think, oh, okay, I should write this down. And there will be individual notes, but a lot of times a multiple area, a bunch of kids are doing the same activity. And so as long as you kind of get a little more familiar with the dimensions and the objectives, it's easier to pull the notes. When you first look at it, you think 38 objectives with dimensions. You're like, and you have 13 to 20 kids. You're thinking, okay, well, this is just crazy. But it does get easier.
Thanks.
Sure.
No, and I think I'm pretty impressed, Christy. You've only been doing this for a year and you've already got it like that.
I think she should get her teaching degree.
I'm really kicking myself for not doing that, by the way.
There's still time.
No, I think that sounds awesome. Another thing I've seen people do, especially with the gross motor, is they'll use gym time if it's like an indoor recess day, and they'll say, okay, everybody, we're gonna do some fun things, and then they have them hop and skip, and then people are just checking off to see if they can do those things. So
yes, with all that snow last year, we did that a couple of times where we're like, okay, kids, we're gonna go to the gym. We made snowballs out of old socks, and that helped them with some of the gross motor with the ball, and that way nobody was getting hurt.
Oh, I like that idea.
That's a very good idea. Let's go to that other article, and I'm thinking that we looked at this one already. Didn't we go over this one in class? This early childhood curriculum assessment and program evaluation, or am I thinking wrong? I can't remember now.
I don't recall it, but
okay.
I don't recall it in class either, but I have to tell you, between the 2 pages and the 5 pages of this, the 2 pages were much more interesting to read, and it wasn't about length.
Right.
Yeah, I was reviewing them this morning, and that's why I went to the other one first, because I thought, This one is good, and it's one of those joint position statements. And anytime NAEYC has something, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, we better pay attention to this. So it's a joint position statement by the National Association for the Education of Young Children, which is NAEYC, but also the National Association of Early Childhood Specialists and State Departments of Education. Maybe that's why it's so whatever.
Clinical.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good word for it, clinical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What points did anybody want to share?
Well,
Go ahead.
okay, so under indicators and effectiveness, I thought that was the best part of the whole thing, because the indicators and effectiveness is basically the whole point of assessment. If you can't see an indication and you can't use it effectively, then that's, what are you assessing? Why are you assessing?
Right.
I like that.
I like how they have the indicators of effectiveness for the curriculum. So how do you know you're choosing the right curriculum and you're using it appropriately? They also have it for assessment, and they also have it for program evaluation, which I see the first two parts a lot, but I don't often see people really looking at their program.
My favorite part, and I, as a teacher of young children for 10 years, always looking at, developmentally appropriate. I mean, it seems like with this fast testing and everything, when I taught TK, they wanted those TK kids to pass the kindergarten benchmarks. And to me, that the reason they weren't in kindergarten is because they couldn't pass the kindergarten benchmarks. So I just felt like they were pushing the developmentally appropriate things for students. So,
and one of the things about, I know with IGDs in early childhood, we use IGDs, and it's so limiting, I think. And you have to remember, these are screeners.
right.
Screeners over-identify for the most part because they want to make sure they're catching everybody that might be at risk. So it's a screener. It's to be used as a screener. And I think so many people use it as they didn't pass the benchmark.
Exactly.
It's just
Yes.
one piece of an authentic an authentic assessment system. It's just one piece. And I think we have to remember that. And
Yeah.
We had a girl last year with the IGDs that she just wanted to hit the picture closest to her finger, to her hand, and it didn't matter. And I actually had the same thing with some of my own kids where you'll ask them a question, you'll give them 3 answers, and it's whatever the last answer you said was.
right.
Because that gets me done the fastest and back to playing.
Mm-hmm.
And so she always needed to go to the next level from the IGDs. She was always, I can't think of what they called it. Not in danger, but it was some, I can't remember what the name was. At risk. Thank you. I'm like, in danger? I feel like it was something like that. But, and really, we didn't have a clear picture because we couldn't say anything to her when she's taking these testings. But you could see that she just wanted to pick the one where she didn't even have to pick up her hand and would touch the picture closest so that she could get done.
When you say that, it reminds me, I've had some kids who, in older grades, who have learned really well how to read the tester.
Yes.
And they will look at you to see how you respond to their choice. And then they'll change their choice and see how you respond again, and maybe change it a third time until they read
Yes.
your acceptance. That was the right answer. That was what I was supposed to answer.
I think I did that as a child. I really do. I still do it. Like if you have to go to doctor's appointments, they'll be telling me information and I'm really looking at their eyes like, okay, what should I read between the lines here? And I feel like it's made me perceptive, but it probably didn't help me on any of my testing, like actually learning the material.
Well, and think about that too. Are we really assessing what we need to assess in those situations that you guys just described?
Yes. No.
We're not getting
Not really authentic.
no.
Exactly.
And that's where, when we look back at that other article where it said, no, you should know the kids should know the assessor, but I also think the assessor should know the child.
Yes.
Because if you know your children are just picking that, I would maybe put them on a red flag. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to watch, but test her or assess her in a different way, just to see if he or she really does grasp those concepts.
Well, and she scored really highly on gold things where we were taking notes where she was really in a thing, but on these, you know, it's the match the sound or match the, and she just did it because we had to take those out in the hallway away from the class, and everybody else was playing because it's a one-on-one thing, and she was familiar with us, but her goal was to get back to playtime.
When they take those IGD tests, then they just usually take that at the end of the year, right? Or do you have to take the kids that are low and work with them every week like you do with FAST?
You don't have to work with them every week, but there's a time period, but it's longer than a week. I think.
Do they take those IGDs at the beginning of the year or at the end of the year?
I think
They take them twice. I think we took them twice during the year.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I thought the IGDs was just at the end of the year. So
I know they do it for sure too, and I was, for some reason I was thinking they did it free, but maybe I'm.
Well, and I wasn't in my classroom at the very beginning of the year, so I know that I saw 2, but there might have been a 3rd before I was there.
and then like with the FAST, you had to progress monitor them all the time. So
Yes.
Everybody once a week had to go through and do some monitoring and stuff. So I didn't know if that IGDs was the same.
It's very similar, I think.
I think that is it used to be optional. Now, whether or not, because I think that's become more, I think more people are using the iPad IGDs. It used to be a kind of a paper or a book IGDs.
Mm-hmm.
But I think most people are using the iPad, and then with those, they do have you pick some to monitor, but you don't have to monitor all, right? Is that right, Christy?
Yes, that's right. We only had to, out of our 13, we only had to monitor 2.
People who weren't in the green or whatever.
Right. They were considered at risk, in need of resource or something. And one of them was both of our kids were ones that just wanted to get back to playtime more than anything. They both probably needed some intervention, some help, but a lot of it was they scored even lower than they would have because they just enjoyed playtime and social interaction. They just excelled in. And so having that time away, so we ended up doing it during nap time because neither of them were napping, and they did improve considerably.
That's a good way to do it.
Sometimes I think, depending on the tool, we're testing how well we taught them to take a test, not really their skill.
Yes, I agree with that for sure.
And don't you think it would be, I shouldn't say it that way. Do you think it would be better to maybe try to enrich the activities versus pulling them on that one-to-one drill and test? I don't know.
I do. I mean, to see the difference in when we were using gold and when we were doing the IGDs, and even just their physical, like emotional reaction to it was a whole different child. It was a whole different setup. And so they just really did a lot better when they were able to, because they really liked that social time. If they were doing the same things that they were testing in the IGDs that we were doing in a gold activity, they scored wonderfully. You know, they charted wonderfully, I should say, and right on course where they should be.
I
It
think
was,
some good.
I feel like at that young age, they don't need that drill and kill, you know. They probably just need it more, you know, in kindergarten if they don't have the skills by then. But I feel like it's a waste of time at that young age.
And again, we have to remember it has to be engaging for children in order for them to learn. And if it's not engaging and it's just something they can't stand and they want to hurry up and get it done, we're teaching them to not like school.
And that's true for all of us at every age.
exactly.
Right.
So just, we have to remember it is one piece of an assessment process. It's just one piece. So,
I feel like a lot of those standardized tests are for the convenience of the data, that they're in a format that we went through and we checked off all of the students and we evaluated this isolated thing, and this is the result that we got. And so it's convenient to look at that information, even though I don't think it's a really accurate assessment for this age.
and I agree. I think one way we could use it, I think it, like just what you said, it could be a useful tool for us to see what we need to do to prepare for better instruction. If we see that we're real low in what doesn't belong, and you know, that category part, it's like
Mhm.
rather than pulling children individually, it's like, oh, let's do more of this in my lesson plan so kids really get this concept. I think it's a better reflection on what I need to teach as a teacher. And then when we check skills next time, did the kids get that?
Yes, I agree. Sorry.
They're, again, a useful piece of assessment. We just need to think about how we're using that information. Anything else in this article that you guys wanted to bring up?
I thought it was funny that on the last page, there's a whole section about how the education system really needs to be better resourced, better funded. It really needs, I mean, look, it's a lot of words to say that they need to put, that the United States needs to put more money into education.
It's you. If we value education, it needs to go. I think it needs to be birth to 8 extra strong in those programs.
I agree. It's the first time I've really read an article that wasn't solely about we need more money. Like this was all about curriculum assessment, evaluation, and by the way, we still need money. We still need more money, more resources, more people. It was nice to see that there.
Right. It's kind of sad too that the second to last paragraph at the bottom. Well, why don't I just pull it up? Right here, where it says, unlike many other countries, the United States continues to have a fragmented system for educating children. And yeah, it just goes along with what you just said, Christy, that we're good. We can do better.
Yes.
We could do better.
And I think they're doing good with this, you know, the gold and getting all, I mean, you know, when I first started teaching, you're just out there on your own, you know, just figure something out, teach it, do your own curriculum, whatever. And now at least it's getting more even across the board. Everybody's using the same things. And I like that.
I do too. And I think if people are doing their gold, like it sounds like you guys are doing, if you're doing it with integrity and you're doing it to make decisions about your kids, and I love how you're able to put your data in every day. I think that's amazing that you can do that. If you're doing it with integrity like that, then I just think that's amazing. Not everybody's doing it that way. And I'm hopefully as people get more familiar and they don't just see, oh, I have to do gold 2 to 3 times a year, I'm just gonna do what I want until it's checkpoint time, then you're not doing it with integrity.
Right.
It's got to be easier to do it on a daily basis than to try to cram it all in at once, too. So.
That would be frustrating. Okay, well, guys, ladies, we're gonna play a little Kahoot game. Do you whoops? To see all the answers. Okay, I'm gonna put it big because then we're gonna play it.
Terrible at games. Okay.
You have to sign up with your phone.
Okay.
And you guys are gonna use player versus player. So once you get the, there's gonna be a game pin that comes up
Do
here.
we need a phone? Do we need our phone?
Yeah, you'll need your phone.
Okay, we gotta go get it.
I don't have a phone.
Well, if you don't have a phone, just shout out your answer. Or do you guys just want to do it like that? You just want to shout out answers?
Oh, that'd be better. Otherwise, I've got to go grab my phone.
Okay, we'll just do it that way.
Well, you can just shout.
All right, we'll shout.
Everybody wants to shout?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to turn you up a little bit. Can you hear the music?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why is it doing?
Oh, because
no players are done. Okay. I'll get my phone and we'll have one player, so it'll start. Oh my gosh, where'd my phone go? And if anybody else wants to, you're welcome to. There are 7 questions. All right. Are you ready?
$38.
38.
Oh, you guys are awesome. Woo! There are 38 objectives in gold.
Oh.
So far, we're ahead. What area, thinking about gold, what area does uses language to express thoughts and needs fall under? What do you think? Language? It was language. What 5 components are in my teaching strategies? We learned this that day we all met together. Remember the little icons at top?
Oh, it's the red one. Teach, assess, develop, report.
Okay, let's try it. Nice. Yeah, it's teach, assess, develop, report, and family. And those are the ones that you guys will all use if you're using the gold system. True or false? I have to purchase the whole system in order to use gold.
False.
That is correct. What you have to purchase is just the gold system itself, and it gives you some things that come with it. And I want to say it's like $32 a child. The state funds a big portion of it also, but My Teaching Strategies has a continuum of development that ranges from good job. Yeah, birth through 3rd grade. That just changed last year. It used to be birth through kindergarten. Now it's birth through 3rd grade. The color band for 4-year-olds is
Because they have it in a blue square.
I didn't hear what you guys said.
I think it's green.
Blue.
Let's
Green or blue?
Like
It's kind of both green and blue.
Oh, the blue.
It was blue. Oh,
Yep, that's blue. Green is for 3-year-olds, I believe.
okay.
So you might see some of that at the beginning of the year, maybe.
Yeah, you'll see them fall in that green band possibly. But hopefully by the end of the school year, they'll be in their true color band.
Okay.
In the gold structure, there is the area followed by the objectives. What's next?
Dimensions.
Yes, dimensions. Oh, you know what? I'm giving you guys the wrong one. That's so funny. I'm like, how come this is the one that you guys already took?
Yep.
Yeah. Do you want to do the other one or are you good?
Sure. Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, let's.
We're all here.
Gosh,
We
that
can work on
irritates me.
I wondered when you clicked on it, I noticed the one below it said gold
Zoom.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the one. Okay, we're just gonna play this one. Can we just play?
Maybe under game options, does it say something? I don't know.
I thought maybe if I just look at it. How about I do it like that? Okay. But then you guys are gonna see the answers.
No, that won't work then.
No, we're gonna have to play it. Okay. So we're gonna do it this way. Okay. Let me go back. Sorry. Because I looked at that and I'm like, how come it?
I have my phone. I can put mine in.
Okay, perfect.
My phone rang in the middle of it.
All right. We are ready to start. 7 questions. This looks normal now. Childhood assessment is
All of the above.
yep, all of the above. It's gathering info, using the info to plan activities, and reviewing the info about a child. And this is a message for Jessica, who's going to be watching the recording. You get to answer your questions on a different sheet. And so you'll stop the video and then you'll answer your questions on your own. Then you can check your answers once you start the video again and see all these. All right, what is not true about assessment?
Completed in a day.
That is true. Assessment is ongoing over many days. True assessment. Informal child assessments do not include right. They do not include because that's a formal child assessment. Which of these is a type of formal assessment?
Standardized tests.
Right. Which of the following assessment tools is not researched and tested and accepted as credible?
Interest.
HighScope is, Teaching Strategies Gold is, the Work Sampling System is, Pinterest is not. Question 6, the correct order of the Gold assessment cycle.
I don't know.
This one's a tough one, isn't it?
Either green or yellow.
Yellow, I didn't get it. I was going to say blue too. Dang.
Nice. Observe, analyze and respond, evaluate, plan, repeat. Yeah, that one was a tough one.
There's a lot to read before you could decide.
Right, yeah. I should have put more seconds on that one. Last question. Which assessment tool is required? Right. Gold is required. The rest of them, the CAPER was one that our AEA made up back when I was a teacher many years ago. Ages and Stages is a screener that you can use, but it's not required. Same with IGDIS. Gold is the only one. So nice job, people. All right. Early learning standards. We're going to move on to that. We're going to just look, remember that, and these are links. Remember when I told you that the early learning standards, the new one just came out this summer, the version 3?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I swear it's a 600-page document.
400 and something.
Yeah, it's huge. This is what the early learning standards says about, and I just changed the wording on the agenda, about observation as a form of assessment. I better keep those up. Okay. So let's just read this part where it talks about the role of observation and monitoring child's development. I'll let you guys read that on my screen, or if you have it pulled up, pages 22 and 23. What do you want to remember?
A couple things that set in for me was, to observe them in a common, setting or whatever. And then also to concern yourself about their ethnicity or whatever. Make sure that you meet with families and I guess their culture is what it said.
Mm-hmm.
Things, make sure that you're keeping that in mind when you're assessing them or observing them.
Mm-hmm.
I like the part where it says recorded observations verify children demonstrating skills. I like that word verify because I think that gives credibility to observations that I think a lot of people who are unfamiliar with early childhood tend to not find early childhood assessment as credible because it's based on observation. And I like that this says it verifies children demonstrating skills and understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I think that gives it credibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think I like where it says the young children usually show more advanced development in a familiar situation, which is, I feel like on instinct you know that, but to have it actually written out kind of backs you up in your confidence that is the fact.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So this is something you guys can use too, as when people ask you, why do you just sit around taking notes all day long? How come you're not teaching your children anything? And you just talk about what authentic assessment looks like. actually everybody should be doing this.
Yes.
But it's easier just to pass out pieces of paper and have kids do a test and then there's your data. But I mean, that's easier in the upper grades, but maybe not the best. What about, what did it say for families in this box down here? I think.
Well, there has to be a partnership and a trusted partnership. I think that's key.
Mm-hmm.
And that they're a valuable source of information about that child, so that gives you a bigger picture of them.
And don't you think, go ahead.
No, I was just, what they said was exactly what I was thinking, that we should trust what the parents are telling us. And they may know things that we don't.
If teachers and paras can go in and think of that family as being a partner in the education, it just, I think some of us need to just really change our mindsets. Not everybody sees it as a partnership. It's more condemning. It's like, well, at home they're allowed to blah 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 blah, and they're putting the parents down. And I want people to see that there's this partnership. So I did like that, and I like it that it's in print too. Any questions on, and this is just a little chunk, but when I was looking through here, I thought, this is a nice little chunk for us to remember that it's in here. So going on to number 8, the Iowa Quality Preschool Program Standards. When we're a state-funded preschool program, we have to follow one of 3 different standards, and most people are following what we call IQPPS. So it's taken from the NAEYC standards, and we've chosen many of them, just not all of them, the standards and objectives. So this is what the standard 4 is on assessment. And so let's just look at what the Iowa Preschool Program preschool standards, the Quality Preschool Standards says about assessment. So let's just look at this first part where it says we have to create an assessment plan. Every preschool program should have an assessment plan. And so these 2 objectives talk about how to develop that assessment plan. We look at the conditions under which children will be assessed, how many times they'll be assessed. I kind of think these should be flipped. I think we should show the different types of assessment first, but that's okay. Your plan can be flipped. So, if you do screening in your preschool programs, if you use ages and stages, you would say in your plan at the beginning of the year, our program uses ages and stages when we go to the homes to do our initial home visit. And it is used as a screener, which it is. And then there's follow-up afterwards. If any children score in the at-risk area, you just follow the protocol for that screener. Same with, you just talk about IGDs. If you do IGDs, you talk about when it's done and how it's done, but you have to have a plan. Do you guys, Christy and Joan, do you guys have an assessment plan that you're aware of?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Because I'm the para and I wasn't there at the very beginning of the year, I'm pretty sure we do. I mean, we have a guideline that our preschool initiative person lays down at the beginning of the year where, we have our assessments, our IGDs are due at a certain time, and then our gold is due fall, winter, and spring.
Okay. part of the plan also is to involve, if you look up here, ways to involve families in planning and implementing assessments, and it's supposed to be ongoing, and then how you're going to communicate that with families. So then the second part, use appropriate assessment methods. I'll just let you read through those. What do you want to remember about that?
Sure, your assessment methods are sensitive, you know, to their experiences and their families, culture things, and make sure that they're, you know, if they have abilities that need help or things, make them meaningful. I like that one, 4.3. I thought all that was very good.
I like that it's the variety. We sort of talked about that before, where one child you can't see their growth in one part of an assessment, but to have the variety of assessment methods to get a whole picture, I think that's very meaningful.
Right, appropriate for the child too.
Absolutely. And again, if you guys are not familiar with the IQ-PPS, these program standards, so we know the Iowa Early Learning Standards are what children need to do. That's our goals for children by the time they're finished with their 5th year of life, that they're able to do those Iowa Early Learning Standards. These program standards are more an evaluation of your programs. Are you doing these things to be a quality preschool program? And that's why the state of Iowa said you have to choose one of 3 to make sure we're providing a quality preschool experience for children. So this is what it sets on assessment for being a quality program.
Also, it's really tough to get services for children in the very young ages, because the criteria is 2 standard deviations from the norm, and at a young age that's really hard to acquire. So for the kids who need those services, to get that documentation so they get those services early is so critical. It's so important.
You're absolutely right. And I think that's one thing, as a state, we've kind of been over-identifying some children that might not have needed services. They just needed experiences, quality preschool experiences. So yeah, it's documentation is so important. You're right. I'm going to put this bigger so you guys can see all of this part. Identifying children's interests and needs and describing children's progress. There are 4 of them. I'll let you read through those, and then we'll talk about what you want to remember or what stands out.
Personally, I love the 4-7 of the teams meeting weekly to use what has happened to make adjustments in curriculum and to all be on the same page. I love the team aspect of early childhood.
I do too. Are you guys able to do that?
It's built into my job description. It's very specifically. So
That's wonderful.
How many preschool teachers do you have in your school? Joan? Is there more teachers than just you doing preschool?
So each of our rooms that use the gold assessment, we have three rooms, and so there's 3 head teachers, and there are 6 paras that utilize the gold.
And that's nice in a big school. In a small school, you might just have one preschool teacher. So who do they?
But when they talk about the team in a preschool, it's your teacher and your paras are a team.
Okay.
That's the team they're looking at. And then if you want to pull in pathologists and other people too that might see those children, but at least you have that core group of your teacher and your paras, because somebody might observe something, or they might interpret something differently, or they might see the same situation. It's like, oh, well, I thought this is what I saw. And you have that time to talk and to plan.
Does every preschool class have a para, no matter how many kids they have, or is there a certain number?
Well, the state standards are according to age, how many adults are in the room. So it's at least 1 adult per 10 at 4-year-olds.
Right.
I think that 3-year-olds might be a little different. It might be a little, I think it might be 7 to 1 at 3-year-olds, I think.
Mm-hmm. Do you have
I'm sure we only have 4-year-olds, so I'm not sure what the 3-year-old standard is.
And it depends on if you're using I think everybody uses DHS standards, but it might be 1 to 8 for 3s. And then if they're in a combined class, it might be whichever the majority of the class is, that's what you have to follow.
So if you have more than 8 students, then you have a para. Is that how that works?
For 3-year-olds, if you have more than 10 in a 4-year-old program, then you have to add a para. But I like that teaming concept, and I don't see it happening with every district. So you're lucky that you get to do that. The last area is communicating with families. And were you going to say something?
Oh, no, I was just saying at our school, we have 2 preschool classrooms, and we had a para in each. And we tried to, in their individual classrooms, we'd have weekly or daily meetings, really. And then we try to get all 4 staff together at the end of the week and kind of say what was successful and what wasn't.
That's wonderful. And you have that built in too?
Yes. I mean, that was a choice that we as staff made, but that we thought that was the best way to go.
Oh yeah. It's great. I love it that you guys are doing that. This one, communicating with families and involving families in the assessment process. Just remember, families have that ongoing opportunity to share the results of observations from home to contribute to that assessment process. Because remember what we just read, I think it was in the Iowa Early Learning Standards, what we just read about when they're familiar in the setting, you get better results, right? Yeah, it's a more realistic picture. So families probably have the most realistic picture of their child, at least in their setting. Anything else you guys want to share about Standard 4 in the Iowa Quality Preschool Program Standards?
Nope.
All right. We're done with that. We're done with that. Done. This next thing that I want to look at is, and this isn't old. This was prior to teaching strategies changing their format last year. But this is a link to our website at Northwest AEA. And this stuff is still pertinent. You just can't use the link to get you to those resources. But this talks about the Creative Curriculum Fidelity Tool Teacher Checklist. How many of you are familiar with that teacher checklist?
I'm not.
Nobody? Okay, I'll show you. Can you guys see this? Is it backwards or does it look normal?
Well, that's right.
No, it looks normal.
Okay.
Like I have seen that now that you say.
Okay, I was thinking
I see.
probably if anybody, Christy would have seen that. Because are you in the preschool initiative?
Yes.
Okay. So, and you have like, oh, I can't think who your person is right now. Who
It's
comes
Angela.
in? Yeah.
I can't think of Angela's last name.
Starts with a C, right? Conway.
Conway, right? Yeah.
So what she does is she'll come in twice a year and she's checking to see if you are using creative curriculum with fidelity. And so with this tool, and I'm going to put it back on big screen. With this tool, it has 3 parts, and each of the 3 parts, it has different things that it looks at. So part 1 looks at how well a classroom implements the creative curriculum daily resources. And so things that they're looking for, and I'm just going to read from the book.
Okay.
Do you want, okay, you can see me read from the book. It says the first one is the teacher follows the guidance provided in a particular teaching guide. So then it has like A through N indicators. And so when people come in and they're checking because they're checking they're checking your program for fidelity of implementation of teachings of creative curriculum. So if you're using,
I do remember this now.
Okay,
Just
so
forgot that was called.
Yeah, they're seeing if you are communicating with families on what you're teaching, if you're involving families in the study, if they see you that you have your materials already gathered and prepped, so when you say it's time for small groups, you're not going from area to area to collect everything. Everything is right there. You're ready for small groups. They're checking to see if you're adding an interest area materials related to the topics, all those kinds of things. Also, number 2, the teacher uses intentional teaching cards for teacher-guided planned experiences and to individualize instruction. So when you go to teaching strategies and you're up and you're in that teach icon, are any of you guys using the teaching cards, those intentional teaching cards?
My teacher does in our classroom. She sets those up.
Okay, perfect. So again, A through E, it has what you're doing they're just checking off to see how many of those things that the teacher and or pairs are doing. And the next one is the teacher uses Mighty Minutes to effectively facilitate learning during transitions. Do you guys do the Mighty Minutes?
We do. Probably not as often as we should, but a lot of them we do.
They're so handy. Do you use them, Joan?
I don't know if they use them or not. This is my first year using this curriculum.
Okay.
So I don't know if they use. They're available. They're on my shelf back here. So.
Oh, nice. I think it would be really helpful just to, because you're going to have probably 5 to 15 transitions a day, and just having some on a ring for the day, it's like, all right, we're going to do this transition. Number 4, the teacher follows guidance on book discussion cards. So that's another thing that's available through Creative Curriculum is they have the studies, and then in the study, they have book discussion cards too. The indicators would be like reads a story 3 times over several days, introduces new vocabulary, just different things on using literacy in your classroom. Part 2 is called the Foundation, and it has sections on the physical environment, the structure, or what we call the daily routine, teacher-child interactions, families, and assessment. This one has 19 items. And so this one also, I do like it though, that we're looking at physical environment. We're looking at relationships, all of those pyramid model things when it comes to behavior. Relationships and environment are so important. So when it looks at the physical environment, the classroom is organized to support learning and encourage children to work independently and with peers in self-selected activities. So it has furniture arrangement, adequate space in each interest area, just different things that you want to be mindful of. The second one, and there's a lot in here. The second one, the interest areas are attractive, available as a choice daily, and supplied with adequate amount of developmentally appropriate, well-maintained materials. Is this helpful to you guys, or do you not want me to read all this?
No, I
Tell me the truth.
think
Okay. I'm not going to read every different thing, but I'm just going to ask you questions. How about I do that? That way it's more interactive, because just listening to somebody read is kind of boring. So, what interest areas do you guys have in your classrooms?
I've got the craft table, the sand table, what they call housekeeping, but that would be dramatic play. It's just easier to say housekeeping to kids because, you know, you change out the theme depending on, you know, you want to provide new and interesting dramatic play situations. There's the wooden blocks, there's the puzzles, books, lots of books.
We have a science table.
Yeah.
And art center. I can't remember if you said art center right.
I said craft table.
Oh, craft table.
There's also an easel to utilize as well as, you know, yeah.
And that's so funny you said that, because I'm just reading the art. Art area includes an easel with paint and a variety of materials for painting, drawing, cutting, pasting, molding, and three-dimensional constructions. So if you didn't have an easel, you couldn't get credit for that. But yeah, I think you guys hit all of them, except I didn't hear music and movement.
We have a listening center that's sort of a little house, and then we have puppets in it that go along with the story that they can read.
Okay. Okay.
I incorporate music and movement in the daily routine.
Okay.
So, and then there are rhythm instruments that are put out occasionally.
So it could be a choice sometimes.
Yes.
Okay. Another 3 more. There's a cooking. They'll check to see if you have cooking. Cooking area includes basic items children can use to complete food-related projects safely. Some people incorporate their cooking area at snack time, and it's more of a child-directed snack. They can use make their own. They have little directions that could be. Computer area includes equipment. Go ahead.
I kind of have an issue with computer area because lots of studies coming out right now that for preschool, this is not appropriate. They're getting a lot of screen time at home. We shouldn't be doing it at school.
Mm-hmm.
we had a smart board that I would let them use, but it seemed like if choice that some of them just always wanted to do that and not, you know.
Mm-hmm.
If it's available, they'll choose it. But if it's not available, they'll choose other things.
Right. So some days I would just say, no, nobody's going to that area, and then they'd have to do something else.
Our Sally Hartley, Joyce Vermeer, and I are intentional teacher. We do this every year, but this year our focus is on technology in an early childhood classroom because there are such different views. There is a way to use it appropriately, and if it's used appropriately, then it can be used, but in order to be appropriately, it needs to be it's not a solo, in my opinion, and from what I'm reading, it should not be a solo activity. We should view computers like in this one, his name is Chip Donahue from the Fred Rogers Center in, I think it's Chicago, somewhere in Illinois. Anyway, he said we should view screens as windows, magnifying glasses, and what was the other one? Mirrors. So windows would be, it would, and we have to make sure relationship and conversation is happening within that. If a child is just secluded and just playing with different little apps, then to me that's not appropriate, because you're right that they get at home so much and they're missing out on so much learning when they're just engaged with something that doesn't really respond back and communicate with them. But if you're using it to open their world.
Can you say that list again? I want to write that down. You said windows, mirrors,
and magnifying glasses. Go to the Fred
Rogers.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called. Fred Rogers Center for Early Learning. I'm giving you a preview of what our this is what it looks like. And what I love, they have our initiatives, and I like this part where it says, we aspire to help children grow on the inside, learn through relationships, and give meaning to technology. And what our plan for Intentional Teacher this year is, technology, we want people to know technology is here to stay. So parents are going to do it anyway. Teachers are going to do it anyway or not. But children are using it. So let's teach them to be good consumers and learn how to use it appropriately and meaningfully. And we can do that in a good way in early childhood. I would prefer they all be outside all day long and we just learn that way. But that's not the world we live in. So me at my age, I have to adjust too. And outdoors is another one. We didn't talk about outdoors, but it does say outdoors includes a variety of surfaces and equipment for large muscle activities and materials for nature exploration. But it also talks a lot about the environment that you have in your classroom. I should go back to this. The environment that you have in your classroom. It wants it to be print rich. Reflect the language and cultures of the kids in your classroom. Do you have variety of cultures in your classrooms?
I do not.
I haven't met my class yet.
Right.
My family meetings are next week.
Okay. You want your environment to be healthy, safe, and clean. You want your daily routine to be the same pretty much day after day, but you can do different things within those activities. You want to alternate active and quiet, teacher planned versus child initiated, large groups, small groups. You want to alternate all that stuff. But for sure, you want to include 1 hour of choice time. It says exclusive of cleanup is included in the morning and again in the afternoon for full day programs. And 1 hour of choice time for half day programs. So you have to have that hour. And if you don't do the full hour, you will not get credit for that. In addition to that full hour, you should get at least 30 to 60 minutes for outdoor play in the morning and again in the afternoon if it's a full day program. So if you think of your children are there for 3 hours a day, which many programs are just 3 hours a day, and at least an hour and a half has to be dedicated to outdoor play and child-directed play, that's a big chunk of your day, right? Mm-hmm. So then you have to fit the rest of it. You have to fit your small group, your large group activity, all your literacy, all your math. Your direct teaching has to, not all of your literacy and math, because you're going to be doing those things within those center times anyway. That's why interest areas are so important, because you are responsible for setting those up. I'm not going to go through each one of these things because I'm feeling like you guys can get your hands on one. If you would like one, I can find one for you. So that way you can see, or I can I tried to find a link to one, but I could not because, like we talked about, everything is it needs to be purchased.
Gotcha.
But there is a third area. Part 3 is the implementation of the gold itself. So that is that. Any questions? You know, I didn't give you the full overview, but I think you guys can.
Okay. I
All
think
right.
we're good.
I think you're good. Okay. The scavenger hunt using the Iowa Early Learning Standards. You know, guys, I actually forgot to do that. I was going to have you find things in the Iowa Early Learning Standards, but are you okay if I just let you explore them on your own and promise me that you will do that? Christy, I can't see your head nod. I see two nods. You got to tell me verbally. Yes.
Yes, for sure. I will do that.
Okay.
So with that link you gave us to the Iowa Early Learning Center, what would you like us to find exactly?
I just want you to look through it just to get more familiar with it. Notice how there's different colors. Each color represents an area. And just kind of get to know the Iowa Early Learning Standards a little bit better than what you do right now. You don't have to send me any evidence of it. Just your word is good for me. And there's supposed to be some on the Iowa Department of Ed. They hope to, I don't know if it's up just yet, but they hope to have some videos or maybe some webinars that will train you a little bit on the Iowa Early Learning Standards.
Okay.
Oh, if you find that link, will you send that to us?
I will. Let me just look right now to see if they have it up. I have a weird way of getting there, but this is just how I like to do it. So this page has all of the standards. Nope, they don't have it just yet. All they have is a link to that 3rd edition.
Okay.
Okay, the very last thing, I thought it might be helpful for you guys to have a link to the how-to guide for teachers. Just if you're unfamiliar with GOLD or if it's your first year and you're not quite sure how to do things, this is just a nice resource for you. And this was the one that was published last year after all this new,
After the new stuff.
yeah, the birth through 3rd grade. So this will tell you how to get started. It's just, I don't know, a decent resource. Tells you how to add children, how to archive things. So, and it's, I don't remember how many pages. I'm not seeing it. Usually when I do that, it'll tell me how many pages. But it's pretty long. But again, it's just a nice resource for you guys. Tells you how to customize your monthly calendar. So you have access to that. You can play around with it.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. You don't need to. Any thoughts or questions?
I do have a question. So all year long, the preschooler teachers take all that information and they take it all in, and they've got all this detailed stuff on these children. And as a TK teacher, I never got any of that information. So is there some way that they can, is that held because of privacy, or is there a reason why they don't give that information? Or maybe I just didn't follow through, or what? how do they do, what do they do with all that information, I guess, is what my question is.
In my experience, every district does it differently.
Mhm.
So I think that's a district decision. Some districts, pre-K teachers meet with kindergarten staff, teachers ahead of time, and they'll talk about the kids and share.
Yeah, we did that, but I never got,
Never got a copy of anything.
right.
Okay.
So I was just curious if there was, you know, a reasoning behind that, like because of it being a privacy thing, or I didn't know.
It's once they print it out for a child, I think it's like, I want to say if you print it, isn't it like a 23-page document per child? I mean, it's a lot of stuff because it looks at each of those 38 objectives.
For 3 different times during the year. Yeah, it's a lot of information.
Do they put it in their file, their permanent file, that a teacher could go dig it out, or do they keep it in the preschool, or they don't print it out, or just depends on the district?
I think it just depends on the district. I don't know what our policy is. I know our kindergarten teachers don't do, and we don't have TK at our school.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that our kindergarten through 3rd grade doesn't participate in the program, only preschool.
Right.
And so they have a different curriculum. And so I don't know if it's just, I don't know if they don't want it or if we aren't supposed to pass it along. I don't know what the rules are, I guess.
Right. I was just curious because I mean, that's a lot of work to gather all that information. And I just wondered what happened to it all when they move on.
And you're right. It's very valuable information, I think. One of my districts that I work with, they're frustrated because they do send that information along, and the kindergarten teachers have told them, we don't even look at that. We don't care what they've done in preschool. We want a clean slate. We want to look at the child where they are now. They don't want to have any,
Pre-knowledge or whatever.
yeah,
Okay.
which I think that would make a preschool teacher feel, I don't know. That's just a different way to look at it.
Right.
It's useful during the year. I find it hard that we don't pass along. I think our kindergarten teachers have a similar attitude towards it. And I don't know that it's right or wrong. They just feel like they really want to have that clean slate to start with and not have a preconceived notion of what the kids coming in.
Right. And
But I feel like at the end of the year, we have all this information to pass along and nobody really wants to look at it.
we had meetings. I got some information, but I would have welcomed some of that information, and I never got. I guess I didn't actually go and ask for it either, but I always wondered what happens to all that. So that's just something, in the future, how maybe they could, link that or help with the scaffolding in the learning to just, have that information.
I think it would be important to do the class profile and at least have that document, shared that with the teachers, maybe not give them a copy, but at least share that in a group meeting so everybody can see the class profile. So then if there's children that are below their age level in preschool, then you have that information. So if you have concerns as a TK teacher or a kindergarten teacher, it's like, well, let's see what they were in preschool, and you already know that could be an area of concern. I think that would be something. I don't know where you would keep that because it is personal information on a lot of kids, so it should be under lock and file, maybe not in a permanent child file, but at least have it somewhere where people can access it.
I agree.
And maybe that could be part of your assessment plan, what you do with that information at the end of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think it could be really useful in preschool. Like Joan was saying, a lot of the services are hard to get because you have to do so much documentation. There's such a wide area that's like in acceptable, reasonable bounds. But once they get to kindergarten, I think the area that is where they would be in need of services narrows, and that if they had this information, they could really start from the beginning of the year with that information and start documenting right away if they know and then get those services. Because we had 2 kids that we had to document most of the year, and they didn't get the services until February or March. And then by then, they could have had so much more use out of the services earlier, but they really needed to get documented first.
Right. Same with TK. It took almost all year to get someone in
Mhm.
Yeah.
to help. So, but that's what it is anymore. You have to.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, communication. I think that communication between preschool and the next grade should be
And throughout all the grades, I think it's the same thing throughout the whole system. So that might be a component that needs to start happening.
Mhm. We're here to support children and students and to help them be successful, and it just sounds like this would be a nice way to start that.
Yes, for sure.
It feels like you've got a baton to pass and nobody's taking it.
Yeah,
Exactly. It really does. That's a really good analogy.
very good analogy.
Or in some cases, they weren't passing it.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot to think about and a lot to do, and so thinking about that extra too is it's just different. So.
Mhm.
I know a teacher that I worked with last year, by the time, this was in an older grade though, was very frustrated because they identified a need, and the documentation to get the services for that need basically took the remainder of the year. And by the time they got that documentation, it's like, well, it's almost the end of the year, so let's wait till next year. Which is like, this is defeating that we've done all of this and you're not taking the opportunity to at least instigate some of these services that this child not only needs, but has jumped through all those hoops to receive, and you're delaying it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
Are you, is this the AEA you're talking about?
Could be.
Okay.
Could be. Yeah, because we're talking about a combination between hearing and behavioral. The behavioral is probably the biggest quagmire these days.
Yes, I agree. And that was our issue, was the behavior, and it was a behavior issue. And so it took a long time to figure out what he needed. And by then it was March, and then they took a family vacation for 2 weeks. The child, not the services.
Right.
It's seriously being on the other end of it. When I used to do that, first of all, if it was behavior or even if it was academic, I would go into a program and I would observe for a little bit just to kind of get a feel, listen to the concerns, meet with the family, and we had to look at, could a gen ed, if you just scaffold your instruction. So we had to do some gen ed intervention first, and that was a 6-week thing. That was how I did it.
Right.
If it looked like if it needed more, then I would do some special ed intervention, and I had to have 6 weeks of data there too. So you're looking at 3 months for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard. And then you have 60 days to do the eval, which usually I was working on the eval as I was doing my intervention, but it does take a long time because we want to make sure we're not over identifying, but for those kids that really need it, it's got to feel frustrating.
And not to generalize, but a lot of times those kids that need those services, like for instance, the child that I was referring to just recently, he was new to the area. So a lot of his documentation wasn't brought over.
Okay.
And then at the end of the year, another thing that happened is the parent, a single parent situation, announced that they were going to be moving again.
Oh, no.
And you hear that and you go, oh, it just, my heart breaks. My heart breaks.
Right. Oh, that's too bad. We just lost Barb.
I don't know where she went.
I don't know where she went to. She just kind of like, wow, disappeared. Yeah, I know we have what's called disability suspect, and there's different things that questions we have to answer for those disability suspect. And there have been, we just need to make sure if we suspect a disability, let's get moving on it. And if it meets any one of those, I think there's 4 criteria, then we need to get moving.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments?
Nope.
Oh,
Oh, there she's back.
you're back, Barb. Kind of, not yet. Almost. I'll let her come back and then we'll say goodbye. Are you there, Barb? I'm going to stop my screen share. Well, you guys have a great school year, and
Thank you.
Thanks.
yeah, enjoy. Any other final questions, final thoughts?
Nope.
All
This-
right.
This was great this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
look forward to going through that user guide. Thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You guys take care, and I'm going to end the meeting.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.